Okay, so first of all, let me introduce myself a bit. My name is Alonso Fernandez. I am from Colegio Americano de Torreón, the American School of Torreón. And basically, I'll be talking about gameful learning and gameful pedagogy and how it goes a little bit beyond the basic concept of gamification on using games as a way to include our students and to basically have them enjoy or participate into the learning environment a little bit more. So first of all, I would like to ask you guys a question. Just react with a thumbs up if you would consider yourselves gamers or not.
Alonso, perdón que te interrumpa, ¿me
No, no
pudieras
problem.
poner de co-host?
Yes.
Thank
Dame
you.
un segundito. No. Yes. Sometimes. Okay, so to those of you saying no, can anybody share with me like why you would say you're not a gamer? Let's see, Mireya. Why do you not consider yourself a gamer?
Hi, sorry for the background noise here with my kids. Well, I used to play when I was younger, and I don't play anymore, so I don't consider myself a gamer anymore. But I do see a lot of engagement when I talk about any kind of game with my students, so that's why I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Let's go over Stephanie Marie. Why would you say you're not a gamer?
Video games never attracted me, actually, I must say. But telling my French students to enroll them into French that Ubisoft is a French company, that's a pretty good argument for them, for the boys, actually. So I think I might have to get into games more.
Okay, that's interesting. Karen Rothmel, you played Super Mario once, so would you say you are a gamer or not?
I'd say I'm not a gamer, but maybe my concept of what a gamer is not on. I imagine joysticks and shooting people, and I think that's what a gamer is, but maybe I'm wrong.
Okay, so going off on this, I'm assuming all of you have played a video game at one point in your life, or at least have played some sort of game involving game mechanics in your life. So that is what we'll be discussing a little bit here. First of all, I want to dispel a little bit of the information so gamification is applying these game design elements or principles to non-gaming concepts or contexts. So we have been using gaming elements like leaderboards, badges, things like that in education, but we can also use it in business with loyalty cards and loyalty points, and you get so many points and you get a free Starbucks coffee and things like that, and now you're a Starbucks Gold member. So these are elements of gamification. When we are talking about gameful pedagogy, we're talking about building these game mechanics into the course design itself. So from the very get-go, when we start thinking about how our course will look like, what we want it to do and what we want to accomplish from our course, is to think about all of these little tiny things and tiny elements that make game mechanics important and applying them into our course. So this means thinking about or thinking the way a gaming company would think to create a video game or a game itself and applying it to our course design. So to become gameful, we're talking about 5 key principles or 5 key game mechanics to apply into a school setting. We're talking about leveling up, the concept of failure, the concept of choice, the concept of feedback, and the concept of transparency. When talking about education, we've all heard about project-based learning, standards-based grading, constant feedback. All of these elements are being taken into consideration and into these gameful pedagogy elements. So there's nothing really new about this. It's just being purposeful in the way we are going to be implementing them into our course from the very beginning of the course. So let me start with leveling up. We've all heard that teacher that says, you've all got 100% on this course. It's up to you to keep it that way. And as long as we move along in the course, students just turn things in and their scores keep coming down. The concept of leveling up implies or assumes, okay, give me a second. What I was saying with you was about the leveling up is allowing students to grow in their grades. Okay, so sorry about that. How I was saying, we have the concept of leveling up. And the concept of leveling up is taking their students into building up their grade based on a reflection on what they're actually learning and their actual skills. Let's think about standards as different skills in a game that towards they're going to be showing they're proficient eventually. So in a game, usually we have different skills or abilities that a player needs to improve to become better and reach an end goal. We have statistics like speed, their attack, their defense, their magic attacks, their stamina, their HP or their health points, things like this. And gamers or players usually start from 0 and they build up as they progress along the game. So if we think about our standards or our benchmarks in the same way, and we motivate our students to grow. So let's say, how are you in addition? So you can start adding up numbers from single digit numbers. 1 + 1 = 2. That's great. You've got level 1 of addition there because you can add single digit numbers. Now we can move on to level 2 because you can add numbers from 2-digit numbers. So 10 + 20 = 30. 11 + 22 is 33. Now you've reached level 2 and so forth. And we can adjust these different skills or abilities for our students and give them a sense of growth and accomplishment through the leveling up process. The next element is about failure. We need to focus on the princes and not on the pits. For those of you who have been playing or who have played the Mario Bros. Games, it doesn't matter how many times you fall into the lava pits or how many times you are killed by one of the little minions trying to get you. The end goal is still the same. We need to give our students the opportunity to fail without any penalties. The objective of our teaching experience is to show them they can grow and learn, not getting it in the first try. Because how many of us can actually do something at the very first try? I can pretty much assume that not many of you. However, if we keep trying, if we keep practicing, if we keep doing the little worksheets, if we keep practicing, we'll eventually get where we want to make or where we want to get. So in a game setting, usually the players are giving an infinite number of opportunities to fail as many times as they need. But it's not a complete failure because we learn from our mistakes. We learn where we went wrong. And with a tiny caveat for education here, which is our next point, but so do our students. Every time they don't get something, they learn something and they get something from that opportunity. In games, there is no hard penalty for failure. Yes, you have 3 lives to get over a game or a game level, but in the end, you can just hit continue and restart and get another try. the process of failure doesn't take away from the overall gaming experience, and you will always be able to reach the end goal, no matter how many times you failed. And that is a very important concept in education. Because our students, whenever they see failure currently, and whenever there isn't this growth mindset in their concept, they will always feel incapable of doing things, and it's not good for their mental health state in a way. The next element is choice, choosing your own adventure paths. You need to be able to give students the freedom of choice, because when we're growing up and the way we learn, we don't all follow the same path when going to a place. Why should it be different for our students? Whenever you set yourself for a trip, let's say I want to go to Italy whenever all of this ends, I'm going on a trip to Italy. Some people might say, okay, I'm going to fly from Torreon to Monterey, and from Monterey to Washington, from Washington to London Heathrow, and from London Heathrow down to Italy. That's one way of getting to Italy. Another person might say, like, that's too long. I'm just going to take a direct flight from Monterey to Mexico City, and from Mexico to Italy. And that's a different path to get the same place. In the end, the result is the same. And students will obviously choose different paths, but in the end, the growth and the learning should be the same. In most of the gaming systems, or in most of the modern games, there is a way for the user or for the player to choose their own way on how they'll reach the end goal. Thinking about Mario, which is a linear platformer where basically all you have to do is walk right, there are different levels within that process and within that gaming level. There are different paths that you can take. You can go down a pipe and you can collect hidden coins somewhere. The end result will be the same. You will always be able to get to the princess in Super Mario Brothers. And the screenshot from the game in the presentation, Life is Strange, the user is being presented with 4 options. I'm sorry, Kenny. No. Hit him, Kenny. You're right. 2 of them are let him, and 2 of them are stop him. In this game, there's a branching element towards it, and you finally beat the game, but with different alternative endings based on what you choose. And that's basically the same for our students in education. They each end up with the basic set of skills with additional skills added onto from their experiences from learning and from growing within our classrooms. The following element, and it's a very important element, which is the one I was talking previously when talking about failure, is the feedback. If any of you have played a Zelda game, once your heart meter drops down to 3 hearts or 1 heart, there is this constant beeping noise telling you, you only have 1 heart left. Do something about it. Otherwise, you're going to fail. Feedback is a critical aspect of the learning process. We need to be able to give students constant and meaningful feedback. Be smart about your rubrics, and keep in mind that feedback comes in all shapes and sizes. A grade is not feedback. A grade is just a grade, it's just a number. But whenever we're going around the classroom, whenever we're saying or whenever we're checking on student work, hey, you're missing a comma there, or hey, you have not opened your Google document assignment that we're supposed to be working on right now. That's feedback. And our learning lesson from video games or from games is video games give the player immediate feedback on what they did wrong or what they need to do in order to improve. Whether it's that constant beeping when you're low in hearts on the Zelda games, or a checklist of objectives to complete. Whenever you're playing a video game, you know exactly what you need to do in order to be successful in a game. In the case of the screenshot of this video game, it's Grand Theft Auto, and you passed the mission, you completed the objectives. However, and you basically beat the fastest speed with 103%, and you were better than CJ. However, you did not hit the checkpoint, so that's why it says that you completed the mission at an 84%. And I think it gave you a silver badge. If you retry this mission and try to achieve those 3 checkpoints, you might be able to complete it with 100% success rate and achieve a gold medal. So if we translate this into an educational setting, the student was able to complete the assignment. He got an 84%. He did pretty much most of the things they got correctly, but they are given a chance to redo it, to retake the assessment, to retake this assignment for full credit or for full completion points, to show that they have mastered the elements, because they know where they missed the point or where they missed their mark, and they are now capable of knowing or pushing forward into what they need to be doing. The last aspect of this is transparency. We need to be able to give students what they need to succeed from the beginning. They need to know from the very beginning, from when we start our course, what they're going to be learning and how can they achieve those things from the very get-go. We need to be able to have our assignments, our assessments defined at the start of the term, and have those expectations on what we want from them throughout the course. Because if we start making things up as we move along, then we as educators are confused sometimes. If we are confused, then our students will also be confused and they won't know what we're asking from them. That phrase of "thank you, Mario, but our princess is in another castle." It's set, it's defined, it's clear what we need to do. We need to find the princess, and we're going to do whatever we need to in order to get to the princess. Games are pretty straightforward in this sense. They have a very defined, clear path towards victory, towards winning the game or towards beating the game. From the very beginning, you know what to do and where you need to go from the very beginning. There may be some hidden paths, there may be some shortcuts, there may be some side quests, but in the end, you will always be getting back to the place where you started from, and you will always reach the end and the place of success. So these are the basic 5 elements of games that we need to be able to consider when creating our courses to try to integrate them into our learning process. Another thing to consider is our gamers, our players, our students. There is some research done by Dr. Bartle. He made some research back in the 80s with massively multiplayer role-playing games. Well, not massively multiplayer back then, it was just role-playing games back then. He came up with 4 different types of gamers. And he defined them on how they interact with other players and how they interact with the game world. The game world in this context is our lesson plans, our assignments, our assessments, and the gamers in this case would be other students. So we have 4 different types. We have our griefers, we have our socializers, our achievers, and our explorers. The first type of players, or the first incursion into those players, is basically getting them into classifying themselves. How do you classify yourselves? There is a test called the Bartle test, and there is a link in the presentation that I'm showing here. And I will be asking you guys to take the test. It won't take more than 5 minutes for you guys to take the test, but it will show us, there's 43 people currently, a general idea of how many players we have in each of the category types in here. For those of you who say you're not gamers, even though you secretly are, the test will use some gamer lingo, and it's obviously targeted to people who play MMORPGs, but just replace the reference to games or video games with games that you've actually played, like chess, softball, Uno, Settlers of Catan, if you've played those games, because those games are super intense sometimes. So I'll give you 5 minutes. Okay, the results are coming in. We have a lot of explorers here, which is nice. Personally, I'm also an explorer, and I'll explain what each of these things mean, but first I wanted to know what you guys are. I'm surprised we haven't received any griefers or socializers in here. I would assume we would have some socializers. Oh, we do have some socializers. Rossi, Karen. Okay, no griefers yet. Interesting. Okay. Achievers, socializers, nice. There we go. Okay, so what does this mean? First of all, has anybody or had anybody heard of the Bartle test before? Nope, nope, a lot of shaking heads. Okay, so just a little bit of background. Dr. Richard Bartle is a researcher from the United Kingdom, from Essex, I believe. And he was concerned about the way we as humans interact, specifically in the gaming environment. And he created these 4 categories based on interaction with the environment, whether it's interacting with the environment or interacting on the environment, and an interaction with other players or interacting on other players. So keep that in mind when thinking, or when I'm going through explaining the 4 different gamer types. So the first gamer type, and probably and statistically the one with the least number of people who are, is griefers. The griefers, basically, as the name implies, is a grief. They create grief. Their win, or the process of winning, involves somebody else losing. They basically distinguish themselves from others in that the abstract measurements of success that we create, such as grades, may not be as important if there's no direct competition. So these people are super engaged by ranking themselves, by leaderboards, by showing or by knowing that they're growing in the leaderboard and they're better than other people. Obviously, they're the ones that take pride in being better than other people. While we'll see in the latter case with achievers who also get some motivation with leaderboards, griefers like the publicity of it all. They like creating grief, and they like to create mischief and chaos and being better than somebody else. In most of these cases, in a gaming in an educational setting, we don't like that kind of like competition as much, but these are the types of students that keep us on our toes, because they're trying to outprove themselves and outprove to other people. So we need to be very careful with these types of students who are griefers, because somebody is asking, there is a griefer category it's either griefer or killer. I don't like killer that much. It's just griefer seems a little bit less aggressive. What I was saying is we need to engage the griefer type of students with some sort of environment where they can feel that they are important and that they matter and that they're ranking towards becoming better. And griefers are defined by their context with their peers. So yes, there is some competition going on, but it doesn't have to be a competition where others feel less than others, because we will have our socializers, where the socializers, well, let me go back a little bit to the griefers. In here, the game is GTA Online, Grand Theft Auto Online. And the point of the game is there is very little interaction with other players in this game. However, some gamers do interact with other players and enjoy destroying other players and going out of their way to make sure that other players don't get their missions completed or success in their gaming experience. So those are the griefers, because they just love seeing things burn. In the case of the socializers, they enjoy being social. They love making connections. They love teamwork. So they may not like assignments where there's no social components involved. If it's just individual and there is no interaction with other people, then they will feel demotivated and will not do well in those types of assignments. They sometimes dislike assignments that pit them against each other. So they're like the counterpart to the griefer, and like they enjoy being pitted against each other. So we need to be able to balance out those two types of ecosystems within our classroom. And it's simple. When we create groups or guilds or any of those other gamification elements that we've explored in the past, we enjoy these players and the social interaction that it brings with them. In the case of the screenshot of the game, that is Red Dead Redemption Online, wherein several players basically just started dressing up as clowns to demonstrate that they could band themselves together, and it was a public demonstration or an in-game demonstration of their dissatisfaction towards the game. And they reached the news and everything, and it was their dissatisfaction towards the company that creates the games because the game hadn't been updated or wasn't posing any big challenge anymore. And after these demonstrations, a couple of weeks later, the gaming company responded by updating the game and giving them some more options. We then have our achievers. Our achievers are focused on status, on beating challenges and achieving goals, rewards, on being on those leaderboards to a certain degree. But unlike the griefers, the achievers will be content with a personal best scoreboard. They want to be better in themselves. They don't care about the other people. They just care about being better themselves. In most video games, we do have some sort of achievements or trophies going on. In this case, we have the trophies for the PlayStation 4 game Destiny 2, where it does show you the trophies that you have achieved and how rare it is. So it doesn't tell the other players that you're better or than you're worse than somebody else, but it does tell you that only 2.9% of people that have played this game have been able to achieve the Traveler's Chosen trophy, which is obtaining all of the trophies in Destiny 2. So it might be true, it might not be true, but for that player, it's a sense of accomplishment and a sense of achievement. So when we translate that into the educational environment, It's going that extra mile, being able to succeed and completing all of the base tasks or assignments or assessments or benchmarks, and being able to give them that extra mile so that they feel accomplished. So I already did what all of my other classmates are doing, but I still can do more. I can still prove to you and prove to myself that I can add 5-digit numbers. Even though everybody else is still stuck with 4-digit numbers, let me try and show you that I can add 5-digit numbers. Or let me try multiplication, even though I know that's something for the next unit. Let me show you, let me challenge myself a little bit more. So in the case of the achievers, it's going that extra mile, showing them rewards or being better at themselves. And finally, we have our explorers, which strangely, we have a lot of explorers here. But it's good because the explorers are focused on exploring. They like going into these dark abyss, going into the unmapped regions of the game, trying to find the little tidbits and trying to find how the game works. So they're engaged by the story, by the mechanics, by those little hidden treasures that only them can find. And explorers will usually not be engaged a lot by assignments that are too restrictive, that are too focused on, like, you can only do this assignment if you do this. So explorers are engaged by, this is an assignment and all you have to do is prove to me that you can show me how to multiply, how to add, how to subtract, and how to use multiple digits. Doesn't matter how you do it. You can do a PowerPoint presentation, you can do a video, you can do a diorama. So giving them that choice and going back to the elements of gaming, giving them that choice is free for them, and it's engaging and motivating for the explorers because they will try to find different ways to prove to you as a teacher that they can do things, that they can do them well. And I'm saying that you guys being the majority of explorers is nice. It's because the explorers are the ones that find the kinks in the system, who try to figure out a different way to do things. So you being explorers, or a majority of explorers, means that you will be able to find a way to make this work inside your particular classroom environment. You will be able to find a way to make things branch out and experience and be something meaningful for your students in the way they'll create. A little bit of statistics from personal experience. Just don't trust it as a very accurate statistical representation because it is not. It's the average of the scores of 346 of my 10th grade students that over the years have taken this test. And as you can see, a majority of them are achievers. So it's very easy it has been very easy for me to get them to succeed in themselves. And because, as I said, it's leaderboards, it's ranking, it's being better in themselves. Then I have the explorer types, who were those students that always were pointing out the little flaws in my system so that each year I could improve or I can make the game better. Then I had my socializers, and then I had my griefers. My griefers were amazingly great because they made chaos for everybody else, and chaos reigned when they tried to do something. And even though the others felt frustrated, it was also a challenge for them to improve so that the things that the griefers were doing to make the game less fun for them would not happen again. So overall, a game is good for everyone, so long as we have the tiny little bits and pieces that will help everyone in the game. Just a tiny disclaimer, and I love this quote from Kate Holman and Barry Fishman. Gameful learning is not about making school or class easy or fun even. It's about designing the environment or designing a learning environment where the students will be encouraged to focus less on their final grade and more on the actual learning part of things, where they're actually motivated to face the struggles of mastering these new materials and these new assignments and these new things, and persisting day after day after day, because they are able to see the progress themselves. Once our students are able to see the progress they're making themselves, it's very easy for them to make them take responsibility for their learning and to make choices that are self-aware regarding how they are learning and how they best learn and how best they are assessed on their development of this content mastery. At the very beginning, whenever I try to teach this to other educators or to fellow colleagues, it's always the question of, a student won't do this if there is not a grade attached to it. But eventually, if we start motivating, if we start doing these things, our students will be making these decisions for themselves. Whenever I started applying these elements into my classroom, I had students doing way more things to prove to me that they were learning and to prove to me that they were doing the things that I was expecting from them, than had I given them traditional assignments and I had asked from them to do things by themselves. So first of all, thank you for listening a little bit. I know there's a lot of questions going on. So I want to shut up now and allow you guys to ask some questions. Do I have any particular takes on Among Us? I love Among Us. Honestly, it's a very good game to teach students about analyzing and to hearing the different perspectives. And it's very good to practice and to talk about persuasive everything. How is feedback possible if students try something so many times? Technology allows us to be able to give feedback much more faster than usually. And so long as we don't try to nitpick the tiny little details and just focus on the actual things that we're asking from the students. So if my assignment is about the French Revolution and I want them to understand what a revolution is and how the government works, I'm not going to be giving them feedback on their grammar or their sentence structure or things like that. I'm going to focus on those things, and eventually it comes more naturally and it's becomes a little bit more useful. When I build units as games, what website or program are you using to get feedback and awards, or are you building it yourself on a Google site? You can use just Google Classroom to start. I started honestly using just back in the day we used Schoology. Then I discovered a WordPress plugin called Game On, which now I will be sharing with you guys in the resources. It's basically a CMS that integrates with any learning management system, Google Classroom, Schoology that you use, to allow you to create learning paths for students in the way that you don't have to control a lot of the things. So they just pick and choose where they want to go, and you work from that. I have played video games without getting frustrated immediately, so I appreciate that this uses a metaphor about the elements that are not necessarily about playing, but implementing an environment. Thank you. Yes, the important part here is sometimes games can become frustrating when you don't reach a goal very quickly. And there is a very good YouTube series from, I believe his name is Rasputin, who had his wife, who has never played a video game in her life, and had her play video games, and he documented her reaction to video games like Super Mario Brothers, Halo, Portal, and how it's a very interesting perspective. You have the time to watch those to see how the brain thinks and how important it is to build up on the little tiny details of constructing these game worlds. And it's basically how our students learn. I mean, our students don't know anything about our subjects or about our topics or about what they're covering. So starting them small and building up on those things is a critical part. Do you have a platform where students can see their achievements or upcoming unlocks where you control this and just show them? Like I said, there are different ways of doing this. The University of Michigan has a platform called Gameful that is also shared in my slide deck at the end, and I'll share those resources as well, where it allows you to create these things. If you use Moodle, there are also good, what do you call those? I think they're plugins or something like that in Moodle, where you can create these things. If you use Canvas, it allows you to use something similar to mastery-based assignments, whereas you can't unlock certain things if you haven't done previous things before. Honestly, the only one where I've struggled to create something nice is with Google Classroom. However, you can create a Google Slides or a different type of presentation, similar to like an overview map of the pathways the students can take. And students love games and understand these things much better than some adults. So once you start with getting with the flow, it's easy for them to know, like, oh, if I go down this path, then I will be able to do this. If I beat this first, then I'll be able to show you through this place. So honestly, use your students, learn from your students, because they're the experts on this. You do worry about creating a competitive environment, a system that already encourages competition and cheating. Leaderboards for people like me can be demotivating. Completely agree. That's why leaderboards are usually personal and they're not shown with everybody else. So you just show the student their personal leaderboard. So where they're at in their learning environment or their learning experience. So you show them, like, this is how far you've come and this is how far you can get. Usually leaderboards, when I used leaderboards as a competitive element, it wasn't individualized. It was in regards to different aspects. So basically everyone was a winner. Yeah, everybody got a participation trophy basically, but the way I managed it, they didn't see it as a participation trophy, but everyone got one. So it motivated them a little bit more in that regard. What other questions do you have? No other questions. So, I don't know if anyone has any experience with using gamification or gameful elements in their classroom that they would like to share something. Otherwise, we can just move on to the resources section. Just like my students, if I don't call on you, nobody participates. Good. So here are some of the resources that I was talking to you about. There is this really nice blog from Adam Powley called Classroom Power-Ups, where he goes into a little bit more of the detail into some of the elements that I explained here, how to use choice, how to guide them through feedback, all of these things. Another excellent resource is Michael Madara, who wrote this great book called something about pirates or something like that, where he goes into in great depth and detail on how to use these strategies in classrooms from all shapes and sizes. Gameful.me from Mike Scotchko. He's the one where I was telling you that he created a WordPress plugin. And now it's a website where you can, it's an actual LMS website where you can just, I think it's $3.99 a month or something like that. And you create your course through that. It's Rasmutan's YouTube series. It's called What Games Are Like for Someone Who Doesn't Play Games, where he is basically experimenting on his wife or the person who he lives, the woman who he lives with, in trying out different video games and things like that, and sharing some insights and perspectives onto how these things work. And finally, the University of Michigan's Gameful Pedagogy site is really insightful. there's some really interesting white papers in there about how to use gameful pedagogy. They're mostly centered about college level students, but you can take some good takeaways from there to implement them early childhood all the way through high school. So yeah, that's basically it from me. Thank you for coming to this presentation. I hope you can take something away from it. And I know that the philosophy of Live Curious Go Beyond is starting Monday, I can start using something. Hopefully you can start thinking about how to use some of these things on Monday, but definitely take something away from this so you can start working on next year's curriculum and next year lesson plans. Because trust me, the engagement that you receive from students that participate or that are in a gameful learning environment is really, really motivating for you as a teacher, because you actually see them caring about what they're doing and what they're learning and going above and beyond what you had originally envisioned to show you that they're growing, that they're learning, and that they can do things where they want to go. So thank you very much. If you guys want to stay and chat into the coffee, what's it called? Remind me again.
Yes, it's the coffee. I forgot the name, but you can actually the Live Curious Go Beyond Cafe. The link is in the website. So thank you very, very much, Alonso, for sharing your knowledge, your experience. Definitely, we are going to be taking a lot of takeaways from this session. So thank you very much from the Live Curious Go Beyond team, and thank you everyone for being here.